Welcome back. I'm Dad.
I'm Gramp, and this is the 1988 Porsche 944 Turbo that really originally started late start racing back in 2018. And we're going to basically do an overview of the whole car today for you. Go through what was done and the process to get it to where it is today and what we're going to do later on for upgrades this winter to move on to this coming summer or 2024 racing season.
Thanks for coming back to the Late Start Racing channel. Today, Gramp is going to give you a bit of a build breakdown of his 1988 944 Porsche 944 Turbo.
Yeah, this originally came from basically not too far from where we are right now. It came out of a tree line, literally, parked in a tree line next to a stone wall. The engine was on an engine stand because the guy was rebuilding it, supposedly. But from that point, and Forrest was with me, I believe.
I was there, yep.
Yeah, bought it, brought it home, sat for, I don't know how many years, and finally decided to restore the thing, rebuilt the original engine, restored it to where it is today in this condition.
What about that engine, though? It was rebuilt when he bought it, but it wasn't exactly rebuilt.
Well, it was, you know, I don't think they knew what they were doing, but, you know, it ended up coming out pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, we ran the thing, going into 2018, Forrest talked me into running this up the Loring with the engine that was rebuilt. I finished it with a lot of new parts. Ended up, we took it up there. Forrest talked me into running it up to Loring, did well, and from that point, we decided that we turned it into an official Landspeed car to where it is today.
Now, Grant didn't really do the engine rebuild much justice, because when he bought the car, the engine was rebuilt because someone had windowed the block. In the original engine had a hole in it.
Oh yes,
because they threw a rod. So
yeah.
They were rebuilding an engine to put in the car. Mind you, the garage we got it out of was full of Farmall tractors, if I recall. And then when Grant went to check the engine out, just to make sure, like you should, you know, checking water pump, timing belts, and stuff like that. He started to notice a few discrepancies in things.
One of the big things
the biggest one was...
It was an NA block, and it was being built into a turbo. It had the right head, but because of the original block having a hole through the side of it, which I got with the car, which was really nice keepsake.
Yeah.
But it was an NA, which the difference between the two, I don't believe there's much difference. But everything that went back on it was for turbo. Original turbo came with it, all of that.
Isn't it missing the oil return or the oil supply? The NA block, didn't you have to drill it?
I don't know.
No?
The only thing I had to change, but you know, all the parts were there, which was the oil cooler, housing or distribution part of it that distributes the oil to the oil cooler up front. All that stuff was there. The only thing really different was the block itself. It was an NA block. It didn't have the 4451.
Yeah.
It had a 44 like 07, 06, which was an NA block. The only blocks that were turbo was 51, 52 was the Turbo S, 51 was just straight turbo with a K26.
Yeah. Which is why some Porsche owners will call this a 951 or a 952.
I
versus a
think that's
941.
why. Yeah, it's.
I think in some of those tighter Porsche circles.
Yeah, they sometimes people even call them a 968, which I'm not sure of the connection there, but this is a true turbo. It's not a Turbo S. It's a straight turbo with a number of changes, which we'll go through.
Yep. All right, so we're gonna take you around this thing and show you.
Yep, we're gonna kind of go around the car, the things that have been changed thus far. It did get completely restored before 2018, before we ran it at Loring for the first time. So this is the original condition of the car after it had been restored. Some of the things I've done over the years is I removed the fog lights because I was concerned about the speeds and vibration and stuff. Really nothing to do with the weight. I removed the original flip-up headlights and all the mechanism because of room underneath the hood, where the air cleaner is a 4-inch intake tube, and the air cleaner over here that goes down into the bottom where the original turbo air pickup was for the car. The thing is, I have to have headlights. I have to have directional lights to maintain the class that I'm in. It's basically roadworthy, registered, don't need an inspection because it's an antique.
What is the class? You're in
blown gas coupe.
Yeah.
F is the engine size, which is 2.1 to 3.1. This is 2.5, but it's blown gas coupe. They have gas coupe, which would be just NA, and B, of course, blown gas coupe. And this fits that class because it is a 4-passenger, even though the rear seats aren't there. The other things are the hood pins, mandatory as far as on the front here. Other than that, it's stock nose. If we want to go around to the driver's side, we can work our way around. Continuing on down the side, I got 18-inch wheels on front. And because of the regulations, I've had to add windshield tabs up here and here. There's actually 4 on the sunroof, which I thought was because it is latched in place. But this last July, what they call the main event, at almost 167 miles an hour, I noticed in one of the still pictures, there was something not right. So I used the computer and expanded the picture and found out the corner of the sunroof was up about a 1/2 inch. And it was actually the air up over the car was creating such a vacuum that it actually lifted the sunroof up a 1/2 inch. So it's a good thing they were there, because it would have probably flown off and I would have been without a sunroof, and that would have been the end of the running up there. So it was a good thing.
Probably would have been a little noisy and a little windy in the cabin too, I would imagine.
It would. They probably would have still let me run, but it would have been, it would have probably been sucking my helmet off.
Probably.
Yeah. So,
what about the body work in this body that you've restored?
Oh yeah, the body. When I first got this, there was one rust place on the driver's side lower quarter front. This fender was damaged. It had a lot of, as I said before, about being in a tree line. The hood wasn't on it. It had a lot of stuff wrong with it. And having been in the body, doing body work and stuff for about 50 years, just decided to restore it and get it back to where it is. It's not perfect. Just made it into a good driver, which is what it was right up until 2018 when we ran it at Loring for the first time. And basically it was the transition from a regular daily driver, which it can still be, but it's not, because of the clutch that's in it, it's not a fun thing to drive. But it's It's still roadworthy, inspection's not required, but still registrable, and it is insured. So I forgot where I want to start. You can leave that in there. I think the biggest challenge, other than the engine, was the rear wheels on this. They're 19-inch, and they're 28.5 inches in diameter. And I think I went 3 times around getting these to fit. We radiused the wheel wells first, but the tire was still out too far.
Where did we radius the wheels?
This was opened here. We cut this bead back and rolled it back a little bit and basically cut it down. But it really was to no avail because it was still, the tire was just still too big. And I think it was, we had trouble during dyno. The wheel was hitting. We thought it would clear. And I think in 2022, if I remember right, that's when the spring before we went up to Loring for 2022, I got to thinking about a lot of math because you were limited to back spacing, limited to width. So what I ended up doing, I had an 86 944 because I originally had about a dozen of these things. I had an 86 that had a different back spacing. The hub itself is shorter and actually allows the wheel to go in other words, being simple about it. So I changed out the hubs, assemblies, new bearings, but then when you do that, it takes a different rotor. The rotor is shallower. So with that, got the wheel in, and then we made runs, but the wheel was actually hitting up inside the wheel well. And every time I made a run, I smelled something that smelled hot, and I would tell Forrest that there's something burning, and didn't realize what was going on. I had a pretty good idea. But ended up, once we got it home, did the research on it, found out we were hitting. So I ended up getting some actual Porsche 61 millimeter by 13 millimeter spacers, and that solved the problem and changed out the studs. Plus I had to go to steel lug nuts with the right conical shape to those to fit these wheels because it's different, just the way Porsche wheels are. But that solved the problem, and that got us to where it is right now, which we don't have any problems. With these tires, on paper, with, if I remember right, the final drive ratio on this, through the transmission, through the differential, is 2.79. And at 6,500 RPM with these tires, we should be doing about 193. I think once you get over 7,000 RPM, you're up into the 200s. I broke it all down, and there's a website, and I can't remember the name of it, but I played on that for the longest time, trying different diameter tires, different RPMs, but it basically broke it down so that this thing will do over 200 miles an hour if it ever gets there. You need the horsepower.
So one thing I just want to be clear about, why did you do tires and not just change the ring and pinion? Why didn't you change the ring and pinion?
To do ring
everybody else, a Ford 9-inch, Ford 8.8, a GM 12-bolt, Chrysler 8 3/4, you would just change the gears.
Yeah, you would think that would be an easy way to go about it, except for the fact that there isn't any. There are no ring and pinions for this thing, not unless somebody told me about a company in California that will custom make one for you, but I can't imagine what that would be.
Buco dollars.
The only other thing, 944 turbo cup car, they were rated at 175 and above, if I remember right. And the only way that I know they would have got there is that they would have had a custom built, by Porsche of course, ring and pinion. But to try to get one of those, man, the amount of RPM is
like 8-9 grand. What was it?
The original tire, well, it all depends on the tire size.
True.
They were running wide tires because those Cup cars were track cars.
Of course,
they weren't land speed
cars.
cars.
They're roundy round, turny cars, yeah.
Right.
Where we're just going in a straight line.
But at this point, I don't know, I think we're doing 5,800 RPM.
58, yeah, I think it's 58 or 5,900 RPM going through timing at 1.5 miles, doing 167,
about 167 miles an hour.
Yeah. So
I haven't broke that down. I took all the readings from
that's
that
in
run.
Fifth gear, of course.
Yeah.
Fifth gear. And so the tire size is really important because the final drive ratio is really difficult to change without a lot of money. So
it's all RPM and tire.
So the things that make some of the greatest difference is turn the engine faster or change the size of the tire. And of course, the tire, turning the engine faster, yes, working on that. But tire is an easier way to get there in some ways. But of course, it has its issues, like launching the car because it's so high geared now.
It would be with a ring and pinion too.
It would be with the ring and pinion too. Yeah.
But the other obstacle when you're trying to fit a tire to get the diameter, to get the speed that you want, you're up against something else also. Of course, the fit on the car, to find a rim for that tire. But one of the other things is speed rated.
Yeah.
These are a 100Y in parentheses, which puts it over 186, I believe, miles an hour and beyond. And that was the other thing. And it's a Yokohama Advent. I can't remember the rest of it, but it took quite a bit of time.
Advent Sport. Yeah, that's what it says.
And it took a lot of time. I spent more time on the computer looking at specifications for tires. And I already knew the diameter. And that's basically how I started. And it was just line after line after line after line of specifications. The width, the actual diameter. So you have to start somewhere. So the diameter is what I started with. I didn't care about the width or anything like that. Diameter and speed rating. Find the diameter, find the speed rating. And once you narrow it down, go find the rim size. And then find to see if they make a rim for this, which I guess you can get anything. These are 19s, but I guess you can get 20, 22s, whatever you want. So, but it was quite a challenge.
This also has the large Porsche bolt pattern, which is
5 by 130.
5 by 130. Which, of course, if you have lots of money to spend on wheels, you just have someone make you some wheels. But if you're trying to do it, if you're kind of trying to do it not on the cheap per se, but trying to be conscientious about the budget, you don't have a lot of options. You just don't. And this is where it ended up. But it's worked well so far. After we got the fitment. And Gramp failed. He didn't mention when we did go down a dyno, we had some issues trying to strap the car down. The tires would rub. So we actually ended up grabbing some dimensional lumber that was in the, at the dyno shop. And I chopped blocks up out of spruce studs to jam in the suspension so we could dead exit on the dyno. Because other than that, it was just rubbing tire, especially when he loaded on it, it would squat because the factory rear suspension in this car, believe it or not, even though it is kind of a roundy round turn car or whatever by what it was designed for, nonetheless, anyways, it's kind of soft in the rear.
Yeah. Especially this size wheel,
especially with that big wheel and tire seems to really affect the way the suspension reacts.
You can't drop it much.
And so it doesn't drop much. So it was squatting. So we actually had to put blocks of wood in so we could finish the dyno session without trashing the tires on it. And then actually, we ended up putting the regular phone dial wheels on it then, didn't we?
I think he wanted the tires that you were going to run off.
Yeah. I remember there are some videos with the phone dials on. Well, I don't remember why.
The stock tires are only 24 and a half, 25 inches, and these are 28 and a half. So so it's quite a jump up.
It's a big difference.
Because if you look just at radius, that's one thing, but still. Yeah. But it's taken some suspension changes also. to keep it from burying itself up in the wheel well. But,
Yeah,
and then
just
again,
squat and lift the nose, which would be great for a drag car,
yeah,
but this isn't a drag car.
yeah,
Yeah.
yep. Yeah, and this is the class and so on and so forth, and the number of the car. And the number of the car actually came from the last 2 digits of the year I was born. Getting back to the late start racing thing. But yeah, F and then blown gas coupe. We can work our way around actually to the back end. And this is, I started out, I put a chute on this right from the very beginning. And after the first couple runs, I said, boy, that was kind of a waste of time. Didn't think we were getting to there. And the last thing that was said of one of the runs that we made this summer, one of the officials, I think it was Joe, he says, he's not going over 170 this time, is he? And which we weren't. We were only running the mile because of other turbo issues. But now we are at this point where a chute is required, which is hard to believe.
170 or 175?
170, 175.
Yeah, right in there. Yep.
Getting where we are now, it's going to be loaded and ready to go anytime. And it's like a lot of people say, if it's there and something happens, you can use it. If it's not there and something happens, you've got nothing to fall back on other than the emergency brake or park brake, which is not good. And I had it detachable so I could just take it out. It's like a trailer hitch, basically, made out of square tubing with an extension that brings it up, but it actually, the lanyard for the chute hooks down here. This right here, this D-ring, if you want to call it, this is what I put on to go up for what they call the harvest event in the fall, because of this thing, as we were just talking about, being so high geared, this thing taking off, and if you see a video with this thing, the whole thing is just shaking. It's
That's clear. That's 4-9.
It's got a twin disc metallic clutch in it, and it's just cooking that thing, ruining the friction plate that's on the flywheel. So we added this, and we used the 1 ton to get this thing started at the line, and it's so much nicer.
Short shutdown clear. Set 4-9er.
4-9er on his way.
Which, of course, you could, the car makes enough power that you could leave without doing that.
Right.
But the problem is, or the next problem is the transaxle becomes the weakest length. And again, talking about the gearing and everything, those transaxles, especially the turbo ones, are hard to come by at this point in time.
And it's sitting there, and you're just...
So the last thing we want to do is start breaking transaxles when we could just push the car instead, because it's not a drag race.
Yep.
It is to a certain extent. It's a mile or mile and a half long drag race, but we might as well push the car, save the transaxle, save the clutch. And we only push it just a little bit anyway.
At first, 2 things that I was kind of self-conscious about. One was the chute. I felt kind of funny about having a chute on a car that was only doing like 150, 155. But people will tell you, man, if you got it, if you got it on the car, use it if you have to. And you may have to. And the other thing was to put this push plate on the front of the 1 ton and actually push this thing. It was one of those things you felt kind of self-conscious about. And you get a lot of these other cars up there that are, 2,000 horsepower. And of course, they're pushing some of them they're not. But under the circumstances, it was a good choice to do it, because it definitely made it, because it's so frustrating trying to take off, and everything in the car is shaking. literally shaking, including the driver. And you have to cringe because you know what you're doing to the clutch. Because or
the transaxle.
And the transaxle.
If you actually light it up,
Yeah.
light it up enough that it will take off.
Yeah, if it had the regular tires on it, it wouldn't be an issue at all.
It would
You'd
burn
be back
the
down to
tires
that
off.
ratio.
Yeah,
So you'd probably light them up, probably. But we're going to go to the inside. It's got the original back hatch on it. This last year, late winter 2023 or this 2023, added a lot of stuff, and a couple of the biggest things was it's a fuel-safe fuel cell. It's got a bladder, all new Teflon lined fuel lines, stayed with the original Bosch 044 pump, pressure regulator. It's got a gauge on it so we can adjust the pressure. Forrest actually folded this all up for me, gave him the dimensions. He made this cover because even though it's a fuel cell with a bladder, by the regulations, it still had to be enclosed or protect from the driver's compartment. So we had to put a cover on the fuel cell, which is all right. Covers up all the lines and everything. So this is like I say, allows it to be enclosed from the driver, basically. Then we added a air-to-water intercooler up front, took the air-to-air intercooler out. This right here, believe it or not, is a agricultural 7-gallon plastic tank, and it's got some nutserts on the bottom of it. So I mounted it on a piece of aluminum and put it down in the spare tire well, and then went to Walmart and bought a bilge pump for a boat, which is about 900 gallons per hour. And it's got a good sized mouth in it and got some 90 degree.
There's a lot of dirt in there.
Yeah, there is some sediment in there. It had to come from the ice, and people were using that maybe. Possibly. I don't know. But anyway, a couple 90-degree bulkhead fittings, and plumbed it all the way to the front, went down through and all the way to the air-to-water intercooler up front. And it was really inexpensive. I don't think I had like $100 in this whole thing. And it's got a nice big mouth on it with a good cap, and it holds way more than some of the ones I saw that were aluminum that were kind of pricey. And this does fine. I even wrapped it with some insulation just to prolong the ice in there so it doesn't melt so fast. The pump's hooked up here, and I've got a switch up front on the dash for that. There's the back two supports for the roll cage. The roll cage is a auto, I can't remember auto power out of California. I bought just a standard roll cage, and then I bought some 1 3/4 DOM stock tubing, a whole length, and added to this thing. The two down tubes that go to the tunnel to reinforce it this way. There's tabs that actually attach the loop or the halo to the original seatbelt mounts, which are quite rugged. So it's all tied together, overdone, oversized bolts. There's only said they use 5/16 bolts, and I got 3/8 and 7/16, all grade 8s. It's for your own protection. And this is the parachute release here that comes out to here, and there's a brace that goes out to this clamp here, so if something should happen, it doesn't pull the outer cable towards the chute and not pull this through the loop to release it.
How's that go again? Can you show that again?
This goes through this loop right here like this. There's a brace that I've taken off so we wouldn't run into it, and it holds this right here.
Oh yeah, there's a metal brace that goes out.
Right. You remember what happened to Mark? His got caught. There was a guy up there, and he had a burr on the end of this, but his cable was not anchored. So rather than pull it through, which you could have, I think, this part here will pull towards this because there's nothing holding it. So what I did is I've got a bracket that bolts on the back of the chute mount here, and it goes out there and holds this. So no matter what happens here, if you got a burr on it, it's going to pull it through because this is not going to move. It will pull it one way or the other. That's about does it for the back end of this thing. But other than that, it's pretty much stock. I have been removing some of the carpet over the wheel wells and stuff and cleaning all of that up.
Oh yeah, it looks kind of gnarly in there.
It does. It's not.
What's all that spray foam in there?
That is from when we were working on that quarter.
Yeah.
I did that to reinforce that quarter because that had what they call the oil can effect.
Oh yeah.
And by putting that in there, it actually pushed the thing out a ways.
Yep.
That's the side that was damaged.
That side was a hit.
That quarter was damaged.
And that's also we had trouble with. When we modified the wheel wells one side to the next, we couldn't just repeat it. So I cut one side and I got it all the way I wanted it. And then I moved to the other side and I tried to do the exact same thing. And it wasn't exactly, well, it wasn't exactly the same.
The quarter, when it was originally repaired years ago, never was pulled back out to specs. It was in just a little bit. So it made it difficult to radius it. But I did some spray foam in there to stiffen it because it needed it. Because you have what they call that oil can effect, you know, when you bend something and you can allow it to fold in and out. All right, we're going to move to the inside. And the reason why the seat is sitting here, because I'm working on the interior and making some changes in there, but it's a Kirky full containment seat. I think it's classified as the 88 series. Full 3-inch belts. Those I've got to change out because I believe the date's gone by. Something that's part of this whole work on the inside. But yeah, mounted, actually it's mounted in the top back and also the bottom, to the bottom, the original OEM Porsche seat holes. Yeah, I even had leg restraints attached to here, but they weren't required. But yeah, it's got the submarine belt, of course. It's got the cam lock, which I like. They have the lever ones, which I've seen, and I don't know, I just like this, not knowing much about it at the time when I first bought the seat belts. I'm glad I got this because it works nice. It's easy, especially when you got your helmet on. You can't look down. You can't see down in front of you. You can't hook your belts up with your helmet on because it just blocks everything.
Well, not to mention,
below.
Once you get in that car, you're, especially with the containment seat, and the bar.
Oh yeah,
that's right here. You can't.
There's not much movement.
You can't lean forward enough to do anything, which is why Brooke and I have to.
They help me get everything on because you cannot. Another one of those things you felt sort of self-conscious about, getting your granddaughter and son to help you put your belts on and stuff. But after watching everybody up there, everybody has to have help. You cannot do it by yourself because it's just too many things to do. Between the chute, the fire suppression system, your belts, your helmet, just everything. It's a lot to do, especially for somebody that's handicapped like me.
No, he's not
handicapped right here. But let's go to the inside.
Yep.
I'm going to jump over the lift. We kind of lifted this thing up. So it makes it easier to see. But it's got a removable steering wheel, which I can get in and out without taking it out, but it makes it that much easier to do that. I've got kind of a dash up there that I built. It's got all the switches in it for data logging, because we got AEM data logging, which is a great thing. I got a fuel pump switch, which is required, but there's also an inertia switch, the one with a little red cap, That is a motion switch to shut the fuel pump off if I should roll over or something should happen. I've got two different switch for the fuel mode. There's street and race mode. And then getting back to the air, a water to air intercooler, the switch there for the water pump, for the reservoir out back, which is the bottom one here. And that is an ice. We put ice in that, even though we call it water. We load it up with ice, and that thing has worked really well. It's amazing what it does to the intake air temperatures. These are the two fire suppression controls here. This one here, one for the front, which is piped to the front off from a 10-pound bottle in the back, which we will go to that in a minute. This has two nozzles, one facing the bottom of the engine right down the middle, and another nozzle at the exhaust manifold, and I think I'm going to add one over on the turbo side. This one over here, I just put F&R, front and rear. Rear is the one, and there's a nozzle up underneath where my feet are, basically in the driver's compartment. That's what that is. And we got a power distribution over here where I plug in the, this is a GPS speed speedometer, basically. I didn't think it was that accurate, but this last time up there, it was a good reference, because trying to watch this and you start to get up to a certain point, it's not the easiest thing to see. This right in front of you is nice. And it's not only the idea that you can have some idea how fast you're going, but there's going to be a point where you're going to say, oh boy, I'm at 170, 175, and I've got to use the chute. It's a good reference for that also. Like I say, this is the inertia switch here, which is basically, it's got a little button underneath you can reset it. Plus, I have an oil pressure gauge. This goes to something that I added because we had some trouble with that 16 valve head. There's a pressure regulating valve in the side of the head. I don't think there was a problem there. I think it was something else, but I added this and took out one of the plugs that are in the 16 valve head, which is an S head, and added a fitting and put a gauge in here so I can monitor the pressure to the head itself, which it supplies the cams, the lifters, and it's about, most of it stays right about 40, where the oil pressure in the car itself overall is up 70, 80 pounds. So basically the regulator that's in there maintains about 40 pounds to the heads, not over pressurizing for the lifters. And I got a fuel gauge up here for the fuel cell. And this one right here is just a quick reference. It's for boost, so I can see where I'm at. I mean, I've got it up here where it's visible. The only thing we're going to change, I think, I'm not sure yet, but talking about going to an AEM dash where we can put whatever we want up there, whether it's speed, RPM. RPM-wise, when you get the steering wheel on here, you're kind of looking at this at a funny angle, which is, it's kind of bothersome, so I'd like to change that. But other than that, it's the original dash. Oh yeah, chute. This is the chute release. Goes to the rear. Right now it's apart because I'm pulling some things out of here. Seat belts, which I don't think you can see in the view of the camera right now, except for one fourth.
Yeah, we got it.
The 10-pound. It's Stroud safety. The chute Stroud safety also. It's an FE36, 10-pound, 5-pound FE36. And again, like I say, the 5-pound I put to the inside, and the 10-pound I put to the outside. You're supposed to have 5 and 5, but I ended up buying 10 and had it piped inside and outside. And then they said, well, you know, you should have 2 5s, but I had this 10, and I decided that worst case scenario, the fire would be at the engine, and I'd rather run a 10-pound FE36 out there and separate these two, because I didn't feel like if I had a fire in the engine compartment, I want to have that one, the 10-pound, to blow off in the engine compartment. but I don't want it to blow off inside the car itself. And I don't know if anybody's ever seen one of these things basically dump. It is just a cloud, a wet cloud. You can't see anything. So logic just led me to just put the 10 up front and put the 5 inside. And if I get an engine fire, just pull the 10 pound for the front. So it allows me to get out without climbing through a fog in here. If I need the 5 inside, so be it. But right now I'm just would use the 10. So,
You ever had one of those go off?
oh yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. The reason why I know about the cloud, I was assembling it with the 5 and I was doing the cables, and I don't know, I still to this day don't know what happened, but it went off, and it was like a heavy, dense fog, because it is wet. Once it blows off, it's a liquid, and it vaporizes when it comes out of it because of the pressure drop from inside outside. But it fogged this whole thing up. The only problem is it's $40 a pound.
Mm-hmm.
So basically $200 to fill a 5 pounder. Did I get that right? $200, and it was $400 to fill the other one. Yeah, but anyway, it's quite expensive. Yeah, $400. Yeah. But anyway, that just about, and the roll cage. Originally this came with a hoop, but the ones I added these 2 up here, for side control basically. So if it was pushed this way or that way, it would put it on these. And to reinforce these, I added these 2 down tubes right here. That keeps the thing from moving. It basically transfer the strain on these 2 to these 2 here. Basically, it just reinforced it and built like a safe zone inside. And I have my seat bolted to here. I got 2 brackets I built here. Seat belts on a bracket right to the, the tube here where the seat is and stuff. But yeah, and the side bars, or what they call NASCAR bars, they came straight. I had these bent and fitted these in here. I don't think I really needed them, but I put them in anyway. So it's I think it's a pretty safe setup. Plus it's oversized for what is required.
Have you ever built a roll cage before, Gramp?
Nope. This was the first one. And I actually built this in pieces, primed and painted it, and then put it in the car. Because the bottom plates are bolted in with reinforcing plates on the underside with a certain square inch that's required. It's in the regulations as far as
which we'll look at
Landspeed
those
racing.
when we put the car in.
Yeah. It never did, but just, you think about what you're trying to do. It's just common sense. But I think it's pretty rugged. I feel safe in it, let's put it that way.
Hey, as long as you feel safe.
It can be a bit of a challenge being 6 feet tall and not young. It's a bit of a challenge to get in and out of. Well,
actually, this is actually a pretty good shot because you can see how wide your body is and how narrow the door is.
Yeah. But, I do it.
Yeah.
It's something you have to get used to. Actually, I got an SFI 20 suit, which is the highest level you can go. I bought that right from the very beginning. And I'm glad I did all this stuff. I overdid everything, and I'm glad that I did. But with that suit on, it's easier to get in because climbing over that Kirky seat and the sharp edges and stuff, you like to add padding, but then as soon as you add padding, you take away the opening size. So, but with the suit on, it makes it that much easier.
You just kind of slide on it.
Yeah, window net required. At the speeds we're getting up to now, you got to have window net and arm restraints, which I bought all that stuff right from the very beginning when I bought the belts and everything. So.
Because the goal was 200 from the beginning.
Yeah,
that was the goal. Once the car started to get modified, the goal was 200 miles an hour.
Yeah, and I'm glad I did what I did, because I think the SFI 20 suit, back when I first bought that, which would have been 2019, I think, and it's a jacket and a pants, not a one-piece, I think was probably around $900. Now it's $2,100. The seat, when I bought it, the very first time, I think I paid $600 for it. And now the selling price on that is $1,000. So it was a good choice to buy everything, overdo everything and buy it up front, because how's the saying go? Said and done kind of thing. I don't know what
All
it was,
said
but
and
anyway,
done.
yeah.
I don't know. Do it once first.
Yeah,
First is twice.
yeah. So
It's not an economy of scale when it comes to race gear.
yeah, and it's a safety thing. There's nothing wrong with going overboard. Moving on. Yeah, we've kind of gone from the driver's side. Now we're on the passenger side, which this is where I've got the ECU mount. It's an Infinity. Originally, we started out with the original, everything, the Porsche, you know, the ECU, the original Porsche ECU and the KLR, which are not control, with all the original wiring and everything. I ended up buying what they call an M-Tune. Everybody that knows Porsches knows what that is as far as the 944s. I bought that and a turbo as a kit. Ran that, realized that's not where I wanted to be. So I ended up, I think it was 2020, completely stripped the original engine management wiring completely out of this car. The ECU, everything, which I was surprised after I tore it all out. I was always concerned about what other things in the car it was going to affect, and it didn't affect anything. It was just engine management, and that was it. All the original electrical stuff there was there. My son had this Infinity ECU that he got through by trading. Anyway, long story short, ended up buying a what they call flyby something. I can't remember the wiring. Flying lead wiring harness for it. I had never done this before, and I literally walked through this thing. It took me quite a long time. Well, good part of a winter to completely start over with a wiring system on this. It was more or less learning the sensors and the purpose of sensors. You know, a Hall sensor. You know, I've got EGTs with a CAN bus that's tied into the ECU. We've got, of course, temperature, RPM, oil pressure, and one of the things I wanted, and I use EGTs, exhaust temperatures. Also, I wanted exhaust pressure, which has been a key piece of information as far as making changes on this car. I mean, it's a pivot point for everything that we've done, and the EGTs. But yeah, I wanted everything covered. I wanted information. I didn't want to run this thing without good information to make changes, and also protection. And you know, it's boost, charge, pressure, temperature, as far as air inlet temperature. We've got pretty much everything covered, which has been good.
Yeah, that's what we're logging.
Yeah, and we're logging. The biggest thing too, I put it on the logging mode, and we log all of that. So when we get back, right up here is where we had plugged the stick in, as I call it. And we just pull that out, put it in the computer. We can see everything that went on, including anything that you might want to change, let's say. And through that, we found out where our problems are, or where my problems are. And it's been pretty valuable, without a doubt. And again, like I say, the goal at the very beginning was, yeah, ECU for engine management, but the information is the important part also.
Well, so it's a whole thing, right? It's a tunable package. What we had before was OBD1, you know, burn a chip type
Yeah, there was a chip that I installed into the original ECU.
And if we wanted to change it, we would have had to have had it quote unquote burned. It's pretty old, old technology, right? And then we weren't. There was some feedback for the sensors and what was going on in the car, but not. There was a data logging piggyback thing that was. By the time we got done putting all the early '90s tech on the thing, we would have had just as much money as we did in this ECU.
I'd wished I had, the way we are right now, I wished I had done it this way right from the beginning, but it's a learning curve. Never done this type of thing before. Worked on cars my whole life, trucks and cars. Worked with some computerized systems for the business that I had. So I had a good understanding as far as wiring and things like that, especially automotive wiring. Can design whatever I needed for this thing. And the crazy part is that once this was done, all wired, Forrest put the basic tuning mode, if you will, into it. And he was the base tune, and he was learning too. And this thing started right up and ran fine.
You ready? I think so. Here we go. Here we go. Gear, contact.
Until we get to the dyno, and then from there on, and it's been increased. And the only problems really that we've had, we haven't had too many sensor fails. EGTs has been a problem. Bought the aftermarket ones, ran those, keep losing ones, so that I got frustrated and I bought the regular AEM ones. But when I got those were made in China too.
Yeah,
so
the first ones are like $18 a piece on Amazon.
Yeah,
and we had like one here and there that would give us trouble. Yeah. And then the AEM ones, I think, were 100 and.
They were quite a bit more money and same result.
I think about $100 a piece, so like 4 times 100 versus 4 times 18, and they've given us just as much trouble.
Yep. And the only thing about the AEM ones, they have a good long lead for them, and it allows you. I've always wanted to put the Infinity up on a plate up here along with the CAN bus for that, but where it is, it's fine. I recently, or just this time, took out the regular passenger seat here that was a regular Porsche seat. It's kind of big and cumbersome, so I took that out. I'm going to put a racing seat in and put another set of belts in. But yeah, data collection is, to me, extremely important. To just put something out there and drive it and not have information for feedback. You don't know what is going on within that engine. You know, we get EGT temperatures that are a little on the high side, but through having exhaust pressure and EGT temperature or exhaust temperature, we can narrow down where the problem is, which is what we've done over the last 2 years. And the next change is coming up. Hopefully we're going to rectify that. But yeah, this time, as far as in here, I'm going to try to remove some of the dash stuff. Thinking about going to and I don't know if I mentioned it before, but an AEM dash with more information.
So the nice thing about the AEM dash is that when the engine protections come on, they will show on the dash, where right now we only record them, and then obviously we understand the results because it pulls timing and it pulls fuel, so the car stumbles or falls on its face when we have an overboost or we have the car's not warmed up enough, or it's lean because we have overboost, lean, oil pressure, fuel pressure, and a warm, so the engine temperature itself, and then a warm-up timer. So basically we have 5 engine protection modes, and the only way that you know one of them is happening is when the car goes to take off, and you're like, and it goes pop, pop, pop when it pulls timing and fuel. But with a dash, it would be nice because then it would just show you what was going on. Which, if anything, it just helps your mental, your mental condition. Because when you go to take off and you're wailing on it, and all of a sudden the car falls on its face, you're like, what's going on?
We've experienced that.
Plenty of times.
2022, you took it out and did like 3 runs, and it kept falling on its face.
Yep.
And through going through the data that was logged, you realized that you had made some adjustments, and it was running a little bit on the lean side. If I remember right.
That one was the warm-up timer.
That was the warm-up timer?
Yeah, you got to run the car for 20 seconds before you can go wide open throttle. Yeah. And before that, it will fall on its face. That's
and it's been, I can't stress enough, as far as in my eyes, or my feeling about as far as protection, data collection, to me, it's a great thing.
Yeah.
Years ago, when they didn't have any computers at all, you had no idea what was going on.
Well, you had intuition.
Yeah,
and experience.
Old school stuff.
Intuition and experience. That's what that was your data acquisition system was the cranium on somebody with a lot of time.
Yeah. Granted, it gets into a lot of money. It gets into a lot of, in this case, a lot of wiring. My wiring isn't perfect, but it's functional and hasn't failed, knock on wood, as yet. So that just about does it for the inside. It was 10-1.
I think it was 11-1.
Yeah, it was 11, in around 10 to 11.
11-1 static compression.
Yep. So that took quite a bit.
Now.